Drive-In Double Feature. I'm Ryan.
I'm Nathan.
And this is the podcast where we talk about 2 movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before we get into that, we have a Patreon. Now, on this Patreon, we have a couple of bonus episodes with Nathan and I just doing a couple of off-the-cuff conversation, a couple of games, just some extra content to you guys that gave us that extra support. We appreciate it. It doesn't affect any regular content if you'd like to support us in any way, but nonetheless, we still appreciate it. That's over on patreon.com/driveindoublefeaturpodcast. But today, on this Tuesday, Nathan, we're going to be talking about 1977's The Smokey and the Bandit, directed by Hal Needham.
Wow, he's here to direct now, which is cool.
Yeah, get ready to hear that name a lot because we're consequently also going to be doing 2 more of his movies after this.
Yes, yeah, which is funny, but I mean, I think just and we'll talk about it. But the fire that they both make, Burt Reynolds and Hal Needham, with this movie, it's a match made in heaven.
Yeah. Just a little bit of backstory. Hal Needham is Burt Reynolds' longtime stunt double. They've known each other for many years, and in fact, so much that Hal Needham actually lived with Burt Reynolds for like 12 years. I guess Hal Needham said he was having some marital problems at the time or whatever, and Burt's like, I got this huge house, just live with me. And he's like, because he's like, I got like 6 bedrooms, I'll never have to see you. So, but yeah, they lived together, and then Hal Needham, worked on a lot of Burt Reynolds movies, doing stunt coordination, and Hal Needham actually wrote the screenplay to this movie, The Smokey and the Bandit, and apparently when Burt Reynolds read it, he said it was one of the worst things he ever read, but he was going to help him because it was his friend. And Hal Needham, just was not a trained screenwriter in any way, so I think they eventually did have somebody like an actual screenwriter write like a proper script, but what I came to find out is that a lot of the dialogue in this movie is improvised. So but so this is pretty much like Burt Reynolds, like this is the Burt Reynolds movie. Like if you think of Burt Reynolds, this is that movie.
Yeah, it's just a quintessential American classic. I had never seen it before we watched it for this show, but it's a movie that you hear about, you know about it. It just exists. Everyone kind of talks about it. So it's just one of those movies, one of those huge movies.
Yeah. And like that, this was the movie. So at the time, like we said, Burt Reynolds was kind of like, he was a known star at this point. He had some leading roles, but this movie made him like A-list material, made him like top Hollywood leading man for a certain period of time.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? Because I think he is pretty damn cool in this movie. I like his style, and we talked about this with The Longest Yard last week, where that's when he became, to me, a movie star. And here, once again, he really captures his persona. Like, this is the Burt Reynolds persona that you really just know that he really goes into.
Yeah, it's, to me, like, okay, so, I mean, Burt Reynolds has done a lot of dramatic roles before, but I think he really does shine in these comedic movies where he can just, I mean, he just is a really charismatic guy. And I think, like before, like The Longest Yard, he's pretty much like, he's starting to show some personality, but he's kind of a jerk too, and kind of a scumbag a little bit. So it's kind of like, he's not like quite there. Gator is like all over the place where, it's kind of funny, but at the same time, it's like weirdly violent. So this one where it's just like, okay, it's a fun romp. No, very low stakes involved in this sort of thing. Like nobody's in any real danger. It's just a fun time.
Yeah, exactly. But let me tell you, some of those stunts though that are in this, it feels like real danger at times. There's some really cool stunts in this one. I think that's what was missing from like White Lightning and Gator, where I feel like those stunts were really like laid back, and I feel like getting Hal Needham, as a stuntman to really be the director, we got to see more crazy, cool, like, stunts out of it.
Oh yeah, I think the problem was with like White Lightning and Gators that the stunts are way too far in between. So it'd be like, okay, I have to wait like a really long time, or just a whole lot of talking, kind of that didn't really advance the plot in any way, and even like the dialogue wasn't a lot of fun. I mean, in this movie, I mean, right now the dialogue doesn't really advance the plot, but the two leads, Sally Field and Burt Reynolds, they have so much chemistry together. It seems like they're having a really good time. And, it's a lot of fun dialogue. It's real witty too. So
Mm-hmm.
it just seems like a really good time. And I think the good thing too is that this movie does not stop. I mean, they don't waste
No.
any time at all. I mean, the movie begins with the two characters, Big Enos and Little Enos, like giving a job to Burt Reynolds, the bandit, and he was just like, okay, sure. And then he immediately goes and picks up his friend, Jerry Reed,
Mm-hmm.
and the movie's like, all right, let's go.
But no, yeah, that's what I like about this movie is like, it starts like you don't really get like an introduction. I really love when movies do this. You don't have like 20 minutes of introduction, like this is who this is, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, Burt Reynolds is, he drives cars fast. He's a racer. Let's go. You're going to drive 400 cases of Coors beer and do it real fast. Perfect, easy. And then you just get right into it. And I like that the real conflict of this movie isn't from that either. The conflict kind of organically happens along the road trip.
The movie has no slow bits at all. Like I said, I mean, I do like you said, like the conflict is not really so much like the beer run or whatever that they're doing. It's
Mm-hmm.
more that they go and pick up the passenger, Sally Field, and she was going to marry a sheriff's son. And the sheriff was like, I'm just going to get that girl. And they drive after each other, and he's just chasing him, like literally across America almost. So like a 900-mile road that trip.
Like just an evil supervillain almost, just like will do anything to get this man. Played by Jackie Gleason, and man, there's a reason like he stuck around for like the sequels after this because he's great. He's like really, really good in this. He's really funny.
If Burt Reynolds and Sally Field weren't so charismatic with each other, he would steal this show. Like,
oh yeah,
he comes very close, but he's so good in this role, and it's so funny because he's just like, he's a real loud, boisterous guy. He curses a lot, and he's like your typical sheriff that, like the country, you're like, dang nabbit, that bandit got me, that type of thing. So, but he plays it so well because he's a natural comedian because he's done years and years of comedy, so he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and he's able to do it and handle it well, and he honestly, he's the one who Smokey, the bandit there, Burt Reynolds, he does all the stunts perfectly, but it's whenever Jackie Gleason does the stunts where everything goes wrong, where I think it really hits that danger. I can't stop thinking about the part where his top of his car gets taken off because he goes under a truck, and like the shot you see, someone's head pops up after the truck. It's like, holy crap, someone did that stunt. It's great.
Yeah, somebody could have easily died making this movie.
Yeah, so that's just like the power of old school stunts like that. It's awesome.
I know we don't really talk about cars so much, but this is a movie that's produces like an iconic car, and that's the Trans Am. What did you think of the Trans Am that the bandit drove?
It was a great car. Yeah, I think we talked about this before. We're not really big car people, but I appreciate a good car stunt and a nice looking car. And this car, really cool, really sweet. And the rig Snowman drives. You can't forget about that rig. But the Trans Am obviously is the star of this movie.
And it's funny because this movie, like, I forget what they said because I watched the Blu-ray of this movie, and there's a little documentary about this movie on there, and they said something like the sales of Trans Ams went up by like 600%. Like after this movie, like people were like running out to buy Trans Ams after this movie came out.
That's
And
wild.
and this movie really was not supposed to be a hit at first because, I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, Hal Needham originally was going to make this like a real super cheap movie, kind of like a White Lightning or something like that. And he was actually going to get Jerry Reed to be in the starring role. And Jerry
Oh,
Reed
wow.
was going to be the Bandit. But, Burt Reynolds being the guy that he is, he's just like, I'll do it. And
Yeah.
and it's weird because I don't know if you've seen any of the sequels, and I don't know if I should spoil it or not, but in the
It's
third
fine.
movie, Jerry Reed
Oh,
does
yeah.
play like the Bandit, and he looks like, Jerry Reed's really good. He's funny in this movie,
Yeah.
but in the third one, like that movie is like notoriously bad, and the way they show Jerry Reed in that movie, he looks like a knockoff like Bandit because he's got like a little
Oh,
he's got like he's got like a little mustache, he's got sunglasses, a hat, and like the red shirt, and it looks like he's
oh,
straight up
man.
copying him.
That sucks. I feel bad for Jerry Reed. Like they had to be like, oh, step over, Burt Reynolds is here, and then they tell him to be Burt Reynolds. That sucks for him. But I mean, like you said though, in this movie, I think he's pretty good. He's kind of the co-captain along with the Bandit, and he doesn't deal with quite as much. Except for one really weird scene where he stops at like a eat and greet and he gets the crap beat out of him from like this gang, which is so silly. But I love the dog, Fred, because I love bloodhounds. Bloodhounds and beagles are like two of like
Oh,
my. Oh,
oh
go
yeah,
ahead.
the big basset hound.
Yes. I love dogs like that. And yeah, great dog. Love Fred.
It's funny you bring up that scene because now that you say that, I'm like, that's like the most, I guess, like real scene or like most dramatic scene is like the whole movie is
Yeah.
that he like gets, like you said, he gets the crap beat out of him. Like he's all like, he's a bloody mess afterwards. And
Yeah.
it's like the only resolution to that scene was that the guys that beat him up, he just ran over their motorcycles and drove off.
Yeah, it's like a weird like filler scene. I think it was a good scene. It's definitely not a bad scene. So, but yeah, it just kind of comes out of left field. I just love it because they're like, your dog bit me. You know, silly.
Speaking about that dog,
Yeah.
one way, one way they used to promote this movie.
Mhm.
So like we've talked about like weird ways movies have been promoted. So how
Mhm.
this movie was promoted was have your dog in a starring role, and Burt Reynolds is going to judge the dog show.
What?
So they're just like, they said Hal Needham said like all these people just showed up from like all like everywhere down south, and they had like all types of different dogs, and Burt Reynolds apparently was just like did like a little walk around and just like pointed at the basset hounds like, yep, that one.
Love it. That's God, they really had to try hard to get people in the movies back in the day. But it worked because I'm looking at the box office now, and I mean, it cost 4.3 million to make, and it made 126 million, which adjusted is around 300 million today. And it probably would be the most successful movie of that year if Star Wars didn't come out. If Star Wars didn't come out and just destroy everything, Smokey would have been the real winner, I'm sure.
Never heard of Star Wars. I don't know what you're talking about. It sounds like a
Oh,
pretty obscure movie.
yeah, we might have to talk about it later. It's one of those forgotten movies to time, so we'll see.
Yeah, can't believe that unknown thing beat this movie.
Well, everyone remembers Smokey. No one remembers Star Wars. So who was the real winner of 77?
That's right. Why couldn't Luke Skywalker been driving around in a Trans Am?
Yeah, Mark Hamill is just like Burt Reynolds, right?
Exactly. So the other thing too was that, like I said, Sally Field was in this movie, and her and Burt Reynolds had a long relationship with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny, like it's like a little bit of a backhanded compliment because when they were talking about uh, like casting in this movie, Burt Reynolds was saying that the studio really didn't want Sally Field because they said she wasn't sexy enough.
Damn.
And Burt Reynolds was like, well, she's got great talent and her talent makes her sexy. And I'm like, so wait,
Yeah,
are you
that's not
saying
really that's not really a good compliment.
yeah, I was like, that's not really a compliment. You're pretty much just saying that she's not very attractive looking, which she is, but
Yes, yeah, that's just me. That's kind of mean. But like, you're very talented. Were they dating for a while before this movie, or was it during this movie that they started dating?
they actually started dating like a year before this. I mean, it might have been like during pre-production or something, but it was 1976 they started dating. So, and they dated till 1980.
Yeah, gotcha. And yeah, their chemistry shows here. They're great together driving around because, yeah, she's a runaway bride. She shows up. The only weird, I mean, it's the 70s, whatever, but everyone talks about her ass in this movie. It comes up multiple times. They're like, nice ass. So,
She took it as a compliment. She said thank you, and.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But no, they're great. Even like the scene where she's driving the Trans Am and he has to try to get in her lap to take control and it ends up not working out. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, there was the scene where she was driving and he was trying to get into the driver's seat, so he had like put her on his lap or whatever, and she's like, "Oh, I think I like your belt buckle," or whatever.
Yes, yeah. um,
Uh,
I do really like Big Enos and Little Enos. They're not really in this movie, but they're very, very memorable.
oh yeah, it's so yeah because there's such a height difference between the two.
Yeah, it's little. I don't know the name of the tall guy, but the little one's Paul Williams, the guy who Academy Award winner for making Evergreen from what's A Star Is Born, and then he also made a Rainbow Connection from the Muppets movie.
And
yeah.
he wrote the Love Boat theme.
Yeah, and the Love Boat. Dude made tons of music in the 70s, and yeah, I love seeing him in this.
Yeah, he actually was a writer for The Tonight Show, and that was also so that's how they got the cast in the role, was that both of those guys were writers for The Tonight Show. That the other guy was Pat McCormick.
Okay.
And I guess, Burt Reynolds, like I said, he was a frequent guest on the Tonight Show. So they interviewed Paul Williams for the documentary, and they were basically just like, oh, he probably was walking around and he saw the two of them like at craft services, like their height comparisons, like, you know what?
That's perfect.
And they said like the scene too where Burt Reynolds sees the two of them for the first time, like that was like his genuine laugh because he didn't want to see what they looked like. And when he saw them standing next to each other, that was like his genuine laugh.
Really? Okay, that's funny.
I think, there's, like I said, like a lot of the car stunts in this movie are really impressive that I do want to kind of dive into a little bit. The, like they said, like the only unplanned shot in this entire movie was the scene like towards the beginning, like when the sheriff like sees him for the very first time. And there's one scene where like he's trying to outrun the big rig and he was trying to like pull out in front of it and like get in front of it. But instead he got into the lane a little too early and the car ended up getting spun out by the big rig.
Yes, I noticed that scene because there was something about when you watch like that scene when he gets hit by the big rig that seems so like sudden and jarring. And I saw it and I was like, oh, that was either like really well done or it was a mess up. Like it was too much.
Yeah, they said like he just totally spun out. Could have easily just died like right there. And then they were just like, all right, let's just reshoot and go.
Yeah, that's the life of a stuntman, I guess, right?
Yeah. So they said that they had, Hal Needham, there's like conflicting reports, but Hal Needham said that they had 3 Trans Ams and 2 Le Mans, like the car that the sheriff was driving. And they said by the end of it, they had like nothing left over. Like he said that like they were having to like pull parts like from each one. Like the most impressive stunt in this entire movie is when one Trans Am jumps like a lake or like a bridge, and it launches itself and lands on the other side. And he said, "Yep, that was like the whole thing wrecked right there. Couldn't use it afterwards.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, like in the context of the movie, like that was, they're like, oh yeah, just keep driving. And it's just like, no, like in real life, the car would be just a wreck if your car
Yeah.
landed like that.
Yeah, and I mean, Jackie Gleason's car goes over the edge in that scene and then ends up crashing on the bottom of the bridge. Or no, sorry, not Jackie Gleason's car. It's the cop car, and Jackie Gleason crashes into it. That's what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
And they said, like, by the end of the movie, like when they were doing like their final shots, they said they're like barely got it running to shoot the final shot.
That's funny. Was this?
And then,
go ahead. No, I might be getting my facts wrong, but was this film shot in order? I want to say that it was. It kind of feels like it would have had to have been, because like the cars, just how wrecked they get as time goes on, and the damage stays on.
It could have been. I mean, it wouldn't have surprised me if that was the case, just because, one, I mean, Hal Needham is not really like a director, and he seems like the kind of guy that was like, oh yeah, we just shoot it in the order of the script. That makes the most sense. So, but but I guess like the wear and tear of the vehicles, I guess it would make more sense to shoot it in order. So that might be possibly why, but I'm not entirely sure about that.
Yeah.
The other scene in here that I noticed right away, because I was like, that one seemed like it was like something bad was like almost going to happen. It's like the one scene where the Trans Am crashes onto a football field.
Yep.
And it drives in, and then it ends up taking out the dugout, and like the people in the dugout were like really close to that car when it came in. And I'm like, that seemed like almost too close. And then when I watched the documentary, they were like, yeah, so when we shot that scene, cars driving on like smooth grass like that, it's kind of like driving on the water. So he said that like all the kids thought it was really cool, and the parents were like, oh wow, they shoot it really close in these movies nowadays. And and they were like, yeah, close. Yeah. And
that's funny.
And like, because the dugout scene, like they said, like they came like really close to like hitting somebody.
Oh my God.
And Hal Needham was like, yeah, good thing those kids' dads weren't there. We would have gotten the crap beaten out of us. So.
Yeah, probably. Holy crap. I couldn't even imagine that even coming close to happening today. Just yeah, wild. That's a fun little fact. Kids almost died.
Yeah.
During the making of Smokey and the Bandit.
Other fun fact, do you know which director apparently loved this movie?
Oh God, was it Alfred Hitchcock?
That's right.
Yeah, makes sense. I kind of get it, actually, because this movie does have like, it's low stakes, but all the car scenes and everything have like this tenseness to it. So that's cool. I mean, Alfred Hitchcock is an enigma, so.
I was about to say, Alfred Hitchcock loves his trash, I bet.
Yeah, oh yeah, because I mean, there at the end, he made like Frenzy, which is a pretty trashy, sleazy movie. So I feel like a lot of people say this, but Alfred Hitchcock, if he was around in like the 80s, he'd be making some sleazy, great movies.
Oh yeah, boobs and violence all around. But
oh yeah. But I mean, saying that though, this movie isn't even sleazy. There's no sex, nothing like that, no blood. The most violence is like he gets the crap beat out of him in one scene. That's not even that big of a deal. I like that. It's a movie that you could watch with like a family. A few racy jokes, but that's about it.
The one thing in there I noticed, which I don't know how true it is, but one thing they did say is that this movie popularized the word, because like you and I are from the South. We grew up in the South, and there's one word in here that Jackie Gleason says where he instead of calling somebody a son of a bitch, he kept saying, "You some bitch."
Oh, really? This movie popularized that?
Yeah, like Burt Reynolds made the claim, like his dad used to say that a lot, and he like gave that as a suggestion to Jackie Gleason, and then he said like after this movie came out, it kind of became part of Southern lexicon. And I've heard a lot of people say that growing up, and I'm like, like maybe this movie popularized it. I don't know, because I mean, I wasn't alive, obviously, predating this movie. So, but
yeah, I wouldn't know either. Speaking of scenes with Southern language, I always find that I thought the scene was interesting, because Sally Field's really into Broadway. That's like a part of her deal, and of course Burt Reynolds is like, oh, I don't know nothing about Broadway. And he's like, well, do you know anything about Merle Haggard? And like all these Southern terms. And he goes on this speech like, well, intelligence is different whenever you go over the state line for every state. And I was like, okay, that's kind of a fun little scene.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. It was sure. Yeah. It was. That's one thing I kind of liked about their relationship, is that it showed that they were like from two completely different worlds, and it was just kind of like, yeah, they're just having a good time. Like
they really liked each other, even though they're very different. Because they had really like, just I guess the best words, really cute scenes where. Like, because he would complain, he'd be like, I like talking to you. He would obviously be annoyed, but he'd be like, I would never be bored if I spent the rest of my life with you and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, I like that. It's kind of touching. It adds to that relationship. And then all of a sudden, Snowman's in his truck somewhere talking some crap into the CV radio, breaking up the scene.
And one thing too, I do love about the movie is actually how it ends, where they're just like, they show up, they complete their mission, in the allotted amount of time, and then Big Enos and Little Enos are like, hey, you want to go double or nothing? Because they're still in mid car chase, and they're like, hey, you want to go double or nothing? Go to Boston and bring us some clam chowder in 18 hours. And they're like, we'll take it, and they just drive off, and they're off again.
Yeah, I really like that. I like it because it's like the adventure continues, right? Especially after I thought it was great when they're about to drive off and Jackie Gleason's there and Burt Reynolds is talking to him and they're like complimenting each other. He's like, you were really great at chasing, and Jackie Gleason kind of says it back, and they kind of lock eyes like mortal enemies. They love and hate each other. It's really nice. No, I agree. I love that it's clam chowder, because they're like, can you go up there and get me some clam chowder? Silly.
And sadly, Nathan, I hate to disappoint you, but the sequel is not about them getting clam chowder.
Oh, come on. That would have been good if it just picked right up where they left off.
I thought so too, but that's not how it goes.
Gotcha.
One other fun thing in this movie was, so this happens like, I don't know, maybe like 20 minutes into the movie, was Burt Reynolds is kind of like driving real slow, and he kind of like looks into the camera and smiles, like Burt totally breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah, I noticed that. Love that.
And so they talked about that scene too. And Burt Reynolds says like, the Hal Needham said, oh yeah, just look into the camera and smile. And he's like, I thought we were just, doing that for the crew or whatever, just to get, make everybody laugh. And they put it in the movie. And then he said he went up to Hal Needham and he's like, man, you got some major guts, like breaking the fourth wall like that in your first movie. And Hal Needham said, what's the fourth wall?
Yes, that's awesome. Just like he was like, wow, I like that he looked at the camera. Let's put it in the movie.
Yeah, well, they asked him about it. And they asked Hal Needham about it. He's like, yeah, he was having a good time, and he was telling the audience what a good time he was having. I figured it was fun,
and it was. Oh man, sometimes the best filmmakers, they don't even know what they're doing. I love it.
Yeah, it was just funny. Like they just totally had no idea. Like that's like a huge no-no in movies, is breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
So, like,
great use of rule of thirds, Hal. Huh? What?
Symbolism, huh?
Yeah. Lighting? What? They set up lights for these things?
Oh, God. Some other fun facts. So this is somebody did the math, and that they had to drive to Texarkana from Georgia and Texarkana back to Georgia. So that's 900 miles and back in 26 hours. And math-wise, they would have to drive 65 miles per hour without any stops whatsoever.
And they take some kind of long stops.
They take some real long stops sometimes, where they're just like, oh, let's just, look into each other's eyes and, happen like do a little bit of kissing, go pick up some food.
Like literally there's like a scene before where like, oh, we're losing time. And then Burt Reynolds was like, you want to take a rest really quickly? Take a break on our legs over here in the woods. And that goes on for ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever. It's movie time. It's okay.
But, it's because they made up all that extra time. They said they're an hour ahead of schedule. So.
Yes. Yeah.
One other fun thing, because I don't know when we'll talk about it again, was Hal Needham was like at one point known as like the most popular stuntman or like the most famous stuntman in Hollywood.
Nice.
And I sent you a video link. There was the Hal Needham Western Stunt Show playset.
Wow, he was that popular that like he was like Evel Knievel, like just like he got his own toys. That's wild.
Yeah, and if you look at it in the commercial, it's like the action figure comes with like a Hal Needham action figure where he's dressed up in a little cowboy attire.
Oh my God, is that Dick Van Dyke talking about this too?
It is
wild.
And it's like, Hal Needham can, he's got all kinds of loose parts, so he can rumble and tumble and roll, and he can fall out of buildings, go through windows.
This is actually a pretty cool toy. I'm watching the video right now. The way the action figure just falls through stuff, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I like it. Wow, what a time.
And then
Dick Van Dyke falls over.
Yeah.
Yeah, still alive today.
Dick Van Dyke was always falling around.
Yeah, always. But yeah, that's interesting. That's so like inside baseball tool. I wonder how Hal Needham was such a name they could make a toy series out of him before like the internet and stuff like that.
I don't know, man. Like stuntmen have always been regarded as kind of like unsung heroes, and like there are a lot of Hollywood people, that do befriend stuntmen, and they are able to kind of, I guess, that just word of mouth, like everybody was, he's the best of the best. So
gotcha.
And he was kind of like the go-to guy for a lot of stunts.
That's cool. Well, I just had Jeff Bridges. He's used the same stuntman for 20 years or more than 20 years. I guess he just hires the same person. So, I mean, you just have the people, you're always getting them. So,
and Burt Reynolds and Hal Needham had a relationship for a very long time, and in fact, so much so that their relationship was the basis for Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt's relationship in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, I was reading about that. I somehow got to an article talking about how Burt Reynolds was kind of like Leo in that movie, and then when we've been going through his career, it makes sense. I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, and when you think about it, like that was a lot of like Burt Reynolds. Like Burt Reynolds was on like a really popular show at one point, like Leonardo DiCaprio's character was, and ended up leaving and like kept trying to get like on, like make it big again.
Yeah, he's like in Italian films, weird foreign films, like Shark, which we talked about.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's definitely interesting.
But overall, yeah, I could easily see why this movie was so popular. I mean, it's a great ride. It's really fun. Very high recommend for me.
Yeah, same here. I'm really happy that I finally have watched this movie, and it's definitely a must watch. It's just a really great classic car movie. A lot of basis here for like a whole genre of movies to come after it. So it's good. It's really fun. It's super short, super easy to watch.
Oh yeah, only 90 minutes. That's like the thing, like, because White Lightning and Gator are like 2-hour long movies, so this one it's like perfect length where it just doesn't overstay its welcome at all.
Exactly. Not a lot of fat. But
no.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that wraps it up for Smokey and the Bandit, right?
I believe so. Oh, one very last thing.
Yeah.
So I was looking up CB. So like in this movie, they use the CB radio a lot, and they have like fun code names with each other.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, hey, Bandit, what's your 20 there? What's your 10-4 good?" But like that type of thing.
Yeah.
So I was looking up CB name generators.
Okay.
And I did it for you and I.
Okay.
So, and you take like your first initial and your last initial, and it gives you a name. Mine is Redline Hammerhead.
Okay. I kind of like it.
And yours, Nathan, is Nighthawk Coyote.
Oh, yeah, that's rad. I get to be Nighthawk Coyote. Love it. So next time we do a trucker movie like Convoy or something, we gotta just refer to each other as those names.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Uh-huh.
Can't wait.
Can't wait.
Anyway, so thank you so much. But Nathan, what are we going to be talking about next time?
Yeah, so on Thursday, we're going to be talking about The End, another Burt Reynolds directed movie from 1978. That movie is not streaming anywhere, so you are going to have to rent it. But if you're interested, definitely check it out.
Yeah, it's very easy. I mean, it's pretty easy. It's only like $4 to rent if you really want to watch it. But it'll be a good time. I promise you, it's a funny movie. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any thoughts, opinions about us, please email us over at driveindoublefeaturpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at DIDFpod. And again, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/driveindoublefeature. But until next time.